had recently moved to a small town called Merrow Creek in the state of Idaho and moved into an old, cozy two-story house on the outskirts. A new town, a new job, a new life. I'd had an unhappy relationship and a painful breakup, so I decided to change my life completely. All my friends stayed back in that old life, and my mother lived far away, across the ocean, in Ireland. In the evenings, we often talked on the phone. Mom would turn on the speakerphone, and I would listen to the sound of the ocean waves on the other end of the line. That noise calmed me. It was the sound of my distant childhood. We hadn't seen each other for over a year. She kept promising to visit me, but kept postponing it. That night was unusually quiet, and I fell asleep quickly. I don't know how long I slept, but I woke up to a knock on the door. At least that's what it seemed like. Or maybe it was a dream, I thought to myself. Some time passed as I lay still, listening to the silence. And then the knock came again, muffled, careful. I got up quickly and put on my robe. The house was swallowed in darkness. Only in the entryway, a faint light from the street lamps fell across the floor in narrow strips. The knock came again. This time it was louder, more determined. I looked at the clock. It was 2 a.m. Who could be knocking at the door at this hour? The thought terrified me. I moved closer to the door. My breathing slowed, and a moment later, I held my breath entirely, listening. And suddenly, on the other side of the door, I heard a voice. "Lisa, open up, it's me." I froze. My hands started trembling from fear. The voice was a woman's, painfully familiar. It was my mother's voice. But how? That couldn't be. My mother was in another country, an ocean, and thousands of kilometers away. We had talked on the phone that evening, and she was at home in Ireland. She couldn't have gotten here so fast, and without warning. It was impossible. "Open the door, Lisa," the voice repeated, a little louder. "It's me, your mother." I felt everything inside me tighten. It became hard to breathe. My throat went dry. I took a few steps back, then quietly turned around and went to the bedroom, where my phone was lying on the nightstand. Picking it up, I barely unlocked it. My hands were shaking, and my fingers wouldn't listen. The screen flashed brightly and hurt my eyes. With difficulty, I found my mother's number in the contacts and pressed call. The phone rang only briefly, then my mother answered, and I heard her voice, her real voice. I closed my eyes and quietly asked where she was right now. She said she was in Ireland and was just getting ready for work. She was surprised by such an early call. I never called at this hour. She knew perfectly well that it was night for me and I should be asleep. She asked if everything was okay, and I told her that it seemed like I heard her voice behind my door. There was a soft chuckle on the line. Mom suggested that it was probably just a dream. Wishing her a good day, I hung up. Stepping out into the hallway, I looked toward the door. I was too scared to go any closer. At that moment, the wind picked up a little, and a dry branch scraped against the window with a creaking sound. That noise made everything feel even more tense, like a scene from a horror movie. Still, forcing myself to approach the door carefully, I checked that it was securely locked, then returned to my bedroom, pulled the blanket over my head, and fell asleep. The morning greeted me with pleasant sunlight shining through the curtains. Everything looked normal, like an ordinary morning. Coffee, croissants, birds singing through the slightly open window. Half an hour later, I got ready for work, grabbed my phone and car keys, opened the front door, and froze. The entire porch was covered in dirty black footprints, as if someone had walked barefoot through wet soil and then stepped onto my porch. Looking closer, I saw that the prints led away from the doorstep toward the thick bushes behind the house, and beyond those bushes was the forest. The sight made my stomach drop. My knees went weak. I wanted so badly to believe that what happened last night was just my imagination or a dream. But someone had really stood behind my door that night. I had to go to work. All day, I couldn't gather my thoughts. Barely getting through my shift, I drove home in the evening. A light rain was falling, the air was damp, and the house looked gloomier than usual. To be honest, I didn't want to stay here anymore. It felt too uncomfortable, but I kept reassuring myself, telling myself I was just overthinking. As I approached the porch, I noticed that the window on the second floor was slightly open. I didn't remember touching it in the morning, but assumed I had just forgotten because of exhaustion and lack of sleep. After entering the house, I went upstairs, closed the window, and turned the lock all the way. Then I quickly made some food and had dinner, washed the dishes. I read a book on the couch for a bit, then walked through the entire house, checked that the windows were closed, and checked the door. Only after that did I go to the bedroom and lie down to sleep. I tossed and turned for a long time, unable to fall asleep. The clock showed almost 2 in the morning. The house was quiet, and I lay listening to the sound of rain outside the window. Suddenly, I heard a creak, the creak of the old wardrobe door on the second floor, and then footsteps, careful and slow. Someone was walking from the wardrobe deeper into the house, toward the staircase, which means someone had been sitting in that old wardrobe the whole time while I was home. Even at the moment when I went upstairs to close the window, he climbed through and left open. He was there too. I lay still, holding my breath. The footsteps stopped somewhere exactly in the middle. A few seconds passed, silence, and then a voice sounded. A woman's voice, calm, very familiar. The same voice as the night before. My mother's voice. "Lisa, honey, where are you? I need your help. Can you come upstairs?" The voice was calling me gently, softly, but there was something unnatural in that calmness. I didn't expect such a reaction from myself. In an instant, I jumped out of bed, grabbed my phone, my car keys, and ran barefoot into the hallway. Fear paralyzed my movements. My heart felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. From the direction of the staircase leading to the second floor, a cold draft was blowing, as if a window was open upstairs and wind was rushing through. The voice repeated, now closer, as if the person speaking was already near the railing. "Lisa." It was like I was hit by electricity. I screamed and ran for the exit, opened the door, and bolted outside. Rain lashed against my face. I jumped into the car, started the engine, and drove away without turning on the headlights. After I got some distance from the house, I stopped and dialed my friend's number with trembling hands. She was surprised by such a late call, but listened to my crazy story and gladly agreed to help. We sat on her couch until morning, wrapped in a blanket, talking and drinking tea. I told her everything that had happened to me over those 2 days. It was hard to believe. The next day, we went to the house together. The dirty footprints on the porch were gone, washed away by the rain. Turning on the lights in every room, we hurriedly packed my things, silently, barely looking around. That same day, I called the realtor and terminated my lease early. It was already past 10 in the evening when I got off the bus. The stop was right by the park. From there were 2 ways to get home. One along a well-lit sidewalk, but it was the long way, and the other through the park, where the lighting was poor and the atmosphere a bit creepy. But that way was 10 minutes shorter. That evening, I chose the faster route through the park because it had been a busy day at work and I was exhausted, so I wanted to get home as quickly as possible. The stretch through the park always scared me a little. A long alley that in some places turned into a simple dirt path between the trees, a few dim streetlights, and an empty children's playground somewhere in the middle of the park. The wind was weak, almost unnoticeable. The park was dry and quiet, with only the occasional rustle of last year's dry leaves under my feet and the sounds of night insects. I passed the first half of the path without thinking about it, and ahead I saw the playground. I walked past the swings without looking at them. That was always the moment I remembered scenes from horror movies, and it gave me goosebumps every time. After about 10 steps, I heard a faint jingling of chains behind me. I stopped and turned around. One of the swings was slowly moving back and forth, very slowly, as if someone had just gotten up from it and left it rocking. There was no one around. I stood still and listened. my heartbeat sped up. The wind was still very weak. It didn't seem strong enough to move the swing. But I exhaled slowly and forced myself to keep walking. Being scared of a swing was silly, I told myself. After another 10 or 15 steps, I heard a cheerful child's laugh behind me, short and happy, like someone playing hide and seek. The laughter drifted through the air and faded. I stopped again and turned around. The playground was still empty. The swing was still gently moving. I stood there, afraid to take a step. It seemed like a shadow flashed behind the plastic slide, as if someone had run past it, then hid in its shade and was watching me. I tried to catch even the slightest movement, staring until my eyes started to hurt from the strain, but I saw nothing, only thick darkness between the trees behind the playground. I shouted, "Hey, is anyone there?" But my question went unanswered. The next moment, a boy about 7 or 8 years old stepped out from behind the shadow of the slide. He had light hair. He stopped and just stood there, looking at me and smiling. His smile seemed unnaturally wide, and his eyes looked empty and very dark. I asked him what his name was and why he was here alone so late, but he didn't answer. He just stood there and stared at me. I slowly took a few steps back, and he took a few steps too, in sync with me. I stepped back again, then turned around and first walked quickly, and then ran as fast as I could. The whole time, it felt like someone was running behind me, but I didn't look back. I was terrified, on the verge of a panic attack. Without looking back, I ran until I reached the lit street, and only then did I stop and look behind me. There was no one. Catching my breath a little, I headed toward home. That night, I slept poorly, and in the morning, it all seemed ridiculous. I sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee and tried to convince myself that it was just exhaustion and my imagination. There was no boy. It was all in my head. Just night, wind, swings, and my imagination. When I got to work, my coworker, and also my best friend Lauren, asked why I looked so tired. I started telling her everything I had seen and heard last night in the park, about the swings, the child's laughter, and the light-haired boy. At the end, I added that it was probably just my imagination, and I had imagined all of it. Lauren listened silently. When I finished, she frowned. Then she looked at me and told me a story about how a year ago a child went missing in that park. His name was Alden Pierce. It was about a year ago, Lauren continued. According to the boy's mother, she was sitting on a bench, talking on the phone, and her son was playing on the playground, swinging on the swings. Then she got up from the bench and stepped away from the playground for literally a few minutes, and when she came back, her son was gone. No traces, nothing, and no one saw him. It was very strange. He just disappeared. I listened, holding my breath. They searched for him for a long time, but never found him, Lauren continued. There were theories about kidnapping, or that he wandered off somewhere and got lost. His mother grieved for a long time and blamed herself, and later she left the town. People said they heard a child laughing in the park at night, but I thought it was just rumors or someone's made-up stories. When Lauren finished, I didn't say anything. I just sat there silently,